Picture a prince, the heir of one of Europe's oldest and noblest families. A man who spends his fortune, his reputation, everything he has on a single woman, and ends up bankrupt. So who is this woman? A queen? A duchess? No, a penniless working-class girl who grew up in the back alleys of Paris. Today I'm going to tell you one of the most incredible rags-to-riches stories of 19th century Paris. A story so remarkable that one of the era's greatest writers, Émile Zola, couldn't resist turning this woman into the subject of his novel. The real-life inspiration behind one of the most famous characters in literary history, Nana, Valtesse de La Bigne, or by her real name, Émilie Louise Delabigne. Buckle up, we're traveling back to the Paris of the 1850s. Let's set the scene first. The mid-19th century, France. From the outside, everything looks elegant. Balls, operas, wide boulevards. But just behind this glittering shop window lies a completely different Paris. A crowded, chaotic, and merciless city. And in this city, being born a woman means starting the game one goal down. And if you're poor on top of that, the situation is even more dire. This is exactly the world Émilie Louise Delabigne is born into. Her father disappears while she's still very young. Her mother is in no condition to work. So at a tender age, the entire weight of life falls onto this little girl's shoulders. While still of school age, she finds herself thrown into the working world. But what kind of work? 12 to 14 hours of labor a day. Wages barely enough to survive. No security whatsoever. And because she has no education, nearly every door ahead of her is closed. In the Paris of that era, there are thousands of young women just like her, and the system is grinding these women down without mercy. Most are crushed within this machine, lost, their names never even recorded by history. But Émilie is different. At a young age, she realizes one truth. If she plays by the rules within this order, she will never escape this misery for the rest of her life. No matter how hard she works, the system gives her no chance to rise. And here, the story enters a dark chapter. Because in the Paris of that time, for a working-class woman, there is essentially only one way out, and that way runs through selling her body. So, Émilie takes that path. It all begins on the streets. Tragic from today's perspective, yes. But we must not forget, this is not a choice, it's a necessity. The France of that era leaves women no other option. But it's right here that the thing setting Émilie apart from the others comes into play, her intelligence. Because when Émilie enters this world, she isn't just trying to survive, she observes, she learns, she analyzes. How do you speak to whom? How do you catch a wealthy man's attention? And how do you keep it? How should you behave at which gathering? How do aristocrats walk? How do they laugh? How do they drink their wine? By the time she reaches her 20s, she has moved in and out of dozens of different circles. She picks up something from each one. She meets men of the upper class, forges connections, and gradually widens her circle step by step. And most importantly, she cracks the rules of the game. And then comes the turning point of the story. One day, Émilie looks in the mirror and makes the most radical decision of her life. Émilie Louise Delabigne is dead. There's a new person now. With the money she's earned and the connections she's built, she rebuilds herself from scratch with an entirely new identity. First step, the name changes. Delabigne is gone, and in its place comes a name that sounds like a noble family name. Valtesse de La Bigne. Look at the subtlety here. She takes her own surname and, by adding a space and a de, gives it an aristocratic air. Because in France, that tiny little de in your name is the mark that you come from a noble family. But a name alone isn't enough, of course. Valtesse now begins to personally perform the role of the aristocratic woman she had spent years observing in those salons. Her posture, her speech, her clothing, her sense of humor, everything is a meticulously calculated performance. She invents plenty of stories about her past, presents herself as far higher than she really is, and something incredible happens. It works. And how it works. The wealthy of Paris, the city's most influential men, begin to take an enormous interest in this mysterious aristocratic woman. No one knows she came from the streets, or no one wants to know. First come the invitations, then the balls, then the city's most expensive restaurants, private boxes at the opera. Valtesse is no longer a street woman. She is now a courtesan, indispensable to the highest class of Paris. An elite figure who lives under the patronage of the rich and the noble, who is received in salons, who takes part in conversations about art and politics. And the rise doesn't stop. Valtesse's influence reaches such a point that it's hard to believe when you hear it. The most striking example, the Prince de Sagan. This man, one of Europe's most prestigious names, becomes so passionately devoted to Valtesse that he has a private mansion built for her. Just imagine, a prince builds a palace-like home for a woman who came from the streets, and in doing so, burns through his fortune and goes bankrupt. Let me say it one more time. A prince goes bankrupt over a woman who once wandered the streets of Paris hungry. Valtesse is now talked about not only for her beauty, but for her intelligence, her taste, and her charisma. Painters, writers, and politicians are received in her salon. The artistic circles of the era adore her. So much so that this splendor seeps even into literature. When Émile Zola writes his famous novel Nana in 1880, he draws his inspiration from this very life story. A poor woman from the lower class who, through her intelligence and allure, rises step by step in 19th century Paris to become a wealthy and elite figure. The novel is fiction, yes, but the reality behind it is Valtesse herself. For years, she plays this game flawlessly and lives the most luxurious life Paris has to offer. The woman who once counted the cost of a single loaf of bread now sits at the same table as the men who shape the city's destiny. But every rise has its fall, doesn't it? The years pass, Valtesse grows older and slowly begins to fade from that dazzling world. Because the rule of this merciless stage is clear. There is always a younger, newer star. So what does Valtesse do? Does she fall back into poverty like so many others? No. And here too, her intelligence speaks. She has wisely managed what she earned. She's dependent on no one. She withdraws from the noise of Paris and retreats to a quiet life. She begins to live in a peaceful corner with her cats and her dogs. And one of the most beautiful details of the story? As she steps off the stage, she doesn't bury her wealth and experience with her, saying, "Come here, girl, let me teach you something too." She passes all of her experience on to the rising star of the era, Liane de Pougy. She literally hands over the flag. And Liane de Pougy, just like her mentor, becomes one of the most famous courtesans of Belle Époque Paris. Valtesse de La Bigne departs this world in 1910, quietly and without a sound, just as she came. Valtesse's story isn't a moral lesson. It's the story of a woman who created her own path in a world that offered her none. Émilie Louise Delabigne rose beyond the class she was born into, inspired writers, ruined princes, and secured her place in history. Sometimes, a person really can reinvent themselves.